Welcome to Fast Keto. I'm your host, Ketogenic Girl. Hey guys, welcome to this episode of Fast Keto. I'm thrilled to have Dr. Will Cole joining us today. You may know him well from the show that he has with Jimmy Moore, which is, I believe, called Keto Talk. And Dr. Will Cole graduated from Southern California University of Health Sciences in Los Angeles. He has his postdoctorate education and training in functional medicine and clinical nutrition through the Institute for Functional Medicine and Functional Medicine University. Dr. Cole consults both locally and in the Pittsburgh area using a webcam to do consultations for people all around the world. And he specializes in clinically investigating underlying factors and customizing health programs for chronic conditions like thyroid issues, autoimmune, hormonal dysfunction, digestive disorders, diabetes, heart disease, and fibromyalgia. He's a health writer for international publications. You may have seen it in Mind, Body, Green, and he does lots of lecturing. I wanted to let you guys know I have been working on a new version of my original free ebook that I posted and released in 2015, and I've just been working on some revisions to it. If you are subscribed to the Ketogenic Girl newsletter, if you have signed up for the free ebook at any time, you are probably on the list and will receive it when I put it out. But if you want to make sure, or if you haven't signed up for it yet, you can go to ketogenicgirl.com and click on free ebook, put your name and email in there, and as soon as the new version is released later this week, you will receive a fresh copy in your inbox. So be sure to check that out and sign up. I don't send out a lot of newsletters, but I do like to send out some recipes sometime, or I'll send out notices of any special sales. But for the most part, I don't send out a ton of emails. I don't really like to get a lot of emails myself, so that's probably why I don't send them out a lot. But if I have something important to say or something really cool that I think that you'll like, I do like to send that out. And that is for sure the free ebook, which has some great information in there that I've assembled for anyone either just starting out on keto or who may like to use it as a reference guide or something to send along to other people as well who are just starting keto. So check it out at ketogenicgirl.com under free ebook. If you are interested in trying out a ketogenic diet for yourself, or you have been doing keto for a while and just not getting the results that you're looking for, I recommend you check out my 28-day Ketogenic Girl Challenge. What it is a full 28-day meal plan and program that includes all the recipes and foods that you need to eat for 28 days. I call it the 28-day challenge because it's just a great way to get past all the information overwhelm. There's so much information online about keto, and this way you can just get past that. All the macros are calculated for you to get into a state of ketosis, and I was able to do that by using tried and true proven macro approaches that I've developed over several years of doing the keto diet and working with over 3,000 people to date on this program. Our Ketogenic Girl community in the members group is incredible. Everyone in there is so supportive, providing helpful tips and hints and sharing their successes and struggles and challenges as well in the group together, because we're all in this together gaining more health. The 20-day challenge program comes with weekly shopping lists, meal plan overviews, a guide to testing yourself and interpreting the results for keto, and it also comes with my support and coaching in our members only group. So go check it out at ketogenicgirl.com. It's the 28-day challenge, and any purchase of the 20-day meal plans gets you access into the challenge. You can choose to get the program either soft copy or with a printed copy as well. It's printed on beautiful paper, spiral bound, and I ship it out to you the same day. So go check it out, the 28-day Ketogenic Girl Challenge at ketogenicgirl.com. A few disclaimers. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice, as I am not a qualified healthcare provider. The information presented on this podcast is for educational purposes only. Ketogenic Girl is not qualified to provide medical advice. Consult your own physician for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to this podcast. Prior to beginning a ketogenic diet, you should undergo a full health screening with your physician to confirm that a keto diet is suitable for you and to rule out any conditions or contraindications that may pose pose risks or that are incompatible with a ketogenic diet. A keto diet may or may not be appropriate for you if you have any kind of health condition, whether known to you or unknown. So you must consult your physician to find this out. Anyone under the age of 18 should consult with their physician and their parents or legal guardian. Welcome, Dr. Cole. It's great to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So for anyone who may not have heard your podcast or may not have heard of you before, I'd love if you could share a little bit about what brought you here today.
Great question. So I grew up in a home that loved wellness before it was cool, before it was, Instagram sexy in the 80s, 90s. We were doing strange things in the 80s and 90s, like drinking weird elixirs and tonics and herbal things. So that was sort of my worldview as far as life and living. That kind of started there. And I knew I wanted to get in health in some way. So I went to a school in California that's sort of this cool mecca of different practices within healthcare. So there's MDs and DCs and NDs and acupuncturists and oriental medicine doctors, all at Southern California University of Health Sciences outside of Los Angeles. And I heard of a guy who had gone to my school, was older than I was, and his name was Datis Karazian. And he's still today one of the godfathers in a non-mafia way. I'm a grandfather, either forefathers, maybe it sounds presidential, but of functional medicine, and a brilliant guy. Yeah, so hearing him speak about functional medicine was why I wanted to learn more about it, and then immerse myself in it. And that was over 11, 12 years ago. I've been practicing for the past decade, and now where most of my patients are in other states and countries, where we're really consulting them and giving them insight into their cases from a functional medicine perspective. I love what I do. But that's kind of where it started. It evolved from 80s like hippie natural health stuff to functional medicine, which marries the best of Western medicine, which is being evidence-based, running labs, getting thorough diagnostics, and then the best of alternative health, which is getting somebody healthy.
Right. I was actually curious, were you raised vegetarian? No,
I wasn't. No, I was raised in sort of the real food version of the 80s and 90s. Yeah, so it was organic everything, and I wasn't a vegetarian, but I was a vegan myself from about 17, 18, and I was the only one in my family that was, for 10 years, starting around 17, 18 years old. So I talk about that sort of evolution in my book, Ketotarian. So I have a heart for the plant-based world, and that's why I wrote the book, is for both the keto world and the plant-based world and the standard American dieter who's like, what the heck should I eat? Of educating them what I've learned over the years in functional medicine, my clinical experience, and my own personal journey of learning about food.
That's funny. I went vegetarian at the same time when I was 17.
It's a thing, right? I mean, it's like a lot of kids that are like very bright kids, not calling myself bright, but a lot of kids that are thinking for themselves, they're reading about CAFOs and factory farming, and they're trying to do the right thing. It's a well-intentioned move, but it's really part of Ketotarian was educating the plant-based world on the bioavailability of certain nutrients, and based on the individual, some people, maybe people with autoimmune conditions, like I have autoimmune conditions on both sides of my family, and I have like MTHFR mutations and other genetic mutations that I convert nutrients even more poor than somebody else. So it was my journey of bringing some animal meat into my life for my own health. And that's the conversation I wanted to have to a lot of people in the plant-based world through Ketotarian, of saying, okay, if what you're doing is working for you, then fantastic, that's awesome. But if it's not working for you, you have to do something different to see different results. So informing them and then informing the keto world, same thing. If something's not working for you, you need to do something different to see different results. And that doesn't mean abandoning ketogenic lifestyle, but it's what tweaks can you make to make it work for you. So hopefully it speaks to both camps.
Right. And so you were vegetarian for about a decade, and then how have you evolved since then? How have you evolved your way of eating since then? You incorporated some animal foods back in, or are you like omnivore now, or what? I'm not sure exactly.
And I talk about this in Ketotarian, but basically I want to culture an environment of a grace-based way of eating, and not being and eating intuitively and learning that intuition of what works for your body and what doesn't through this process. And so when I'm craving beef, I'll have grass-fed beef. Predominantly my inclination is to be more plant-based. I just enjoy it more. I like it more, but I'll eat beef when I want to. I like wild-caught fish, and that's what Ketotarian was about. It's not a vegan keto book. The front of it's mostly plant-based. There's vegan keto options, and the predominance is plant-based keto because I thought the world needed that. And I think that to give people options, I wanted to give that option. And there's a lot of people in the plant-based world that wants to try keto out, and they can now with Ketotarian. So there's vegan keto, there's vegetarian keto, meaning we bring in eggs and ghee. And then there's pescatarian keto, which is the wild caught fish and all of that stuff. I call it vegetarian. So it's still plant-based, but it's all the good fatty fish and the shellfish and that kind of stuff. So from a nutrient density and the omega fat standpoint, I wanted to cultivate that. So that's kind of what I eat now. So I intermittent fast for the week, and that's what I eat. And what I talk about in the book is after 8 weeks of doing this plant-based keto approach, then if you want to bring in red meat in, or if you want to experiment with carb moderation or cycling, you can do that. There's room for all of us. And what I really want to kind of bring both seemingly polar opposite worlds together, the plant-based and the keto world, realizing we have a lot more in common than we don't. And how can we feel better and be healthy together instead of the divisive conversations that I see on social media, dogging on the plant-based world, and then the vehement vitriol on the plant-based world against anybody that eats meat. I can't stand both. So I really wanted to recalibrate both worlds and say, okay, let's be more logical and moderate about the way we eat.
I think it's such an important thing that you're doing with that, because as soon as you see that debate going on, you see both sides just shut down, and then we're not learning from each other. And then, we're kind of pitted against each other. And so there's a lack of dialogue and there's a lack of conversation about, it becomes this almost like a fight instead of, a collaborative, cooperative effort to finding like what's the best, healthiest thing. I know for me personally, being vegetarian, I had gone that route because of like purely for animals. Like I had such a fondness for animals, and I was like, we can't eat animals. So I really went that route. And I know that shuts down a lot of people to being open to trying, animal-based sources or animal-based foods. And I had a lot of people ask me over the years about doing vegetarian keto. And I always would reply, you need at least, in my opinion, like 2 protein sources from animals in order to do keto. What's your opinion on that?
For sure. Without a doubt, it's going to give people more variety if they bring in 2 animal sources. So let's say they bring in eggs and fish, which is why I gave vegetarian and pescatarian options. Without a doubt, it's easier, doable, and most people are going to enjoy varying amounts of that. They may not have fish every day, but it's something they have, or they have eggs, maybe not every day, but they'll have. But they're still predominantly plant-based. And I think that's where that word plant-based is so important. It doesn't mean only plants, it means plant-centric. Without a doubt, though, I want to be clear that if someone wants to be vegan keto and that's their choice based on their religion or ethics or personal preference, or they just feel better doing it, I wanted to show them a way, and it's completely doable. So I have patients that are completely vegan because of many different reasons, and we put them in this low carb vegan keto approach, and they do great. My job as a functional medicine doctor is finding out what works for one person, what works for you, and what doesn't work for you, what improves your labs, what doesn't improve your labs, and then also how do we make this realistic and sustainable for you? Because you cannot make someone do something they don't want to do. So how can we make the best out of this situation and really give them everything that they need for their body to thrive? So there are many people that eat vegan keto and they love it. They feel fantastic. There's hundreds and hundreds of people in Facebook groups that are solely exclusively talking about being vegan keto. So it's already out there on social media. And I don't know if you know Dr. Diulis, Carrie Diulis. She's an orthopedic surgeon. She's vegan keto and has been for many years. So there's even prominent people, I think, in the wellness world that are doing this before Ketotarian even came out, but I was just giving them a resource so they could find out how to do it.
I have an interesting question for you, because I get a lot of people that message me about this particular question is, say you have a patient who has been vegetarian for a long time, but they're really struggling health-wise, and you can tell that they're just not getting the nutrients that they need. You would like to see them trying some animal proteins. Like, how do you even approach that kind of discussion? And like, do you see people struggle kind of with the psychological aspects of it, or, kind of feeling, I get a lot of people saying, I'm dealing with so much guilt now of eating animals. Like, I'm curious if you've had conversations like that.
Yeah, I think it's important if someone is feeling that way to look at the quality of the meat that they're getting. And maybe even, and I've seen this too for some people that are feel that way or their inclination is vegan and vegetarian and we need to bring in more fish into their life or more nutrients through foods into their life because of their health, then I have them go and visit a local farmer to actually get educated on the topic. And then there's many people that are doing amazing things on a local level, these local farmers that are trying to get good quality meat out there, or kind of an extreme example, but going and calling up a wild-caught fish or company, getting educated, informing yourself, doing research. I find that most people that don't feel well, that realize they have to do something different to see different results, most people will do it and then they obviously will see the fruit of their labor or the fruit of their change when they start making the change and they feel better. And feeling better motivates people. And that's kind of the impasse I was at from my own health journey of realizing, look, I wasn't feeling well. I needed to make a change. And you really kind of have to have a heart-to-heart with yourself. And I even quote Terry Walls in the book. Dr. Terry Walls, for people that don't know, she's did amazing things through functional medicine and food medicine to reverse her MS and get herself out of a wheelchair. And she's doing amazing to this day. She was a vegetarian as well. And she had to have that same sort of come to Jesus moment for her health. Not everybody has to do that. Not everybody has to do that. I don't want to say that. But people that are going through health problems that are eating a certain way, and that doesn't necessarily mean just vegan and vegetarian. I would apply this to even the conventional keto eater. If they're eating all this food and dairy and every day and they don't feel well, they may have to cut dairy out of their life, or they may need to bring more vegetables into their life. Whereas they were thinking, no, this is the way. This was the way that I was supposed to do it. But you have to find out what makes you thrive and what doesn't. But specifically to animals, I think health and feeling well trumps somebody's, maybe they feel bad for a fish or something like that. They really have to realize what their body needs.
That's so interesting you said that. And it's such a great idea that you recommend them to go meet local farmers. For me, actually, my best friend grew up on a farm and farming. And so I just started talking to her and asking her questions. What was it like to eat that cow like after you got to know it every day, or that pig, or, what was it like eating chicken after and just asking her questions and starting to kind of understand more. And it really helped me feel better about making the transition. But I love the idea of actually going to visit a farmer. And I think that's so important to have more connection to what you're actually eating and seeing how well so many farmers put so much love and care into, the animals that they raise and provide for us. So that's a really great point. I love that. For someone who is looking into doing vegan keto, what are some of the main protein sources that, you recommend in the book and that they can, kind of look for? Because that really seems to be the main thing, is doing vegan kind of responsibly. I know I didn't do it as well as I could have when I was vegan and vegetarian as well.
We all have to have this essential amino acids that our body does not produce. We need to get it through foods. So the sort of old argument in the vegan world, in the vegetarian world, not necessarily argument, the conversation of the requirements, and then even the criticism I think that people get that are vegan is that how are you going to get your protein and essential amino acids? And you have to have it in every meal. You have to have all 9 essential amino acids every meal. Well, you don't have to have it in every meal because your stomach, it doesn't separate meals and digest it one at a time. It's not digesting breakfast. And you're basically, when you're eating food, it's all going to your stomach together within, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's a couple of hours. So you have to get the essential amino acids in throughout the day. I think that variety is very important when you're talking about a vegan keto approach, because you have to be getting the essential amino acids, because you're not going to get all the amino acids in optimal amounts by just focusing on one thing. So, the easy answer on this is that I talk about in the book that fermented non-GMO organic soy is an option for someone that's going vegan keto. So tempeh and natto, I like the fermentation from a probiotic standpoint. Other functional medicine doctors like David Perlmutter, who actually wrote a blurb for Ketotarian, agrees with me that the fermentation process is good and it can be have health benefits even for someone that's not vegan. For the vegan keto, that could be a good protein source for someone that's exclusively vegan keto. And then from there, obviously, nuts and seeds have varying amounts of amino acids. I like Sacha inchi, which is not such of a common nut, but it is sort of a Brazilian nut. It's a complete protein with varying amounts of the amino acids that you need. And then obviously hemp and pea and things like that can be brought in as well. Nuts and seeds, fermented soy, and spirulina is a good amount of protein as well. So those are the kind of the top vegan keto protein sources.
Those are great. Now, what is your take on all of this information that's been coming out more and more lately about some of the plant anti-nutrients that we see? Does it set off any alarm bells for you? What's your opinion on sort of, the lectins, salicitates, oxalates that we're hearing about in these plants?
So that's a good point. And I talk about it in the book because I am a functional medicine practitioner first. And you have to talk about that, the bioavailability of the nutrients, mitigate lectins. And this is for people that have gut problems, they have autoimmune issues that are extra sensitive. Because I have a heart for what they're going through, and then the predominance of my patients are people with autoimmune issues, I had to talk about it. And we talk about soaking nuts and seeds to decrease the lectins, but also increase the bioavailability, make it more digestible, more active in a way for your body to use. And many recipes in Ketotarian, I note that are autoimmune friendly for people that are struggling with that. And then there's even people with autoimmune conditions that still can have some of these foods that aren't necessarily quote unquote autoimmune friendly, like eggs and things like that. Some people with autoimmune conditions do fine with eggs and fine with nuts and seeds and fine with nightshades. But I still wanted to differentiate it for people who had more limitations as far as the food is concerned. But yes, to answer your question directly, those are a problem for people with chronic gut problems and autoimmune issues. And there's so much diversity as far as what foods work for different people. And I know, seeing patients for the past 10 years, if I hang my hat on one way to eat for everybody, I'll be proven wrong all day long, because there are people that they don't do well with this food, but they do great with this. And the next person, if they do that, they'll have a flare up by eating the way it worked for the next person. So when you're talking about intestinal permeability and autoimmunity and leaky gut syndrome, really anything's fair game. So any individual person is going to have to take a book or take an article or take a way of eating and personalize it. So I gave them the context in the book to personalize it for themselves. I give them a plan, but from there, they're going to have to switch things based on their individual case. But I, without a doubt, those lectins and phytates and oxalates are a problem for some people. Histamines can be a problem for some people too. I mean, look at fermented foods. We say, fermented foods are fantastic, right? They're good for your gut. Or bone broth, it's great to have for your gut lining. But those are high histamine foods. So even those healthy foods can flare some people up. It's not just plant foods. It's a lot of non-plant foods too. So it's a problem. The problem isn't so much the oxalates or the lectins or the histamines. The problem aren't really those. The problem is the amount of gut problems people have. So the goal of it is to, I would limit or avoid those foods for a while someone's healing their gut. But the problem's the gut problem, not the foods inherently, because humans to varying degrees have been eating those foods for a long time. Problem is all this other stuff we have going on, all the processed foods people are eating, all the exposures to environmental toxins and glyphosate and all this other junk. That's what's really ruined our microbiome, where we can't even handle spinach anymore. People are having problems to even the most innocuous food like never before. We see the amount of allergy, food, and salt sensitivities. So it's definitely a heart of mine. And I did whatever I could in book form without being there with the patient and cooking for them and being their functional medicine doctor to show them how can we tweak this to mitigate these problems if there is one.
Right. And I find it so interesting with the oxalates because, they're found in the highest amounts in some of the healthiest foods that a lot of us will eat when we're, health conscious, right? Like spinach has a lot of oxalates in it, dark chocolate, almonds, cashews, all these health foods, have a lot of oxalates in them. So then you have people running into issues when, they're having too much of those kinds of foods. So do you recommend rotating your greens and especially not relying too much, say, on one particular source of nut protein or that kind of thing to make sure there's lots of rotation happening?
Yeah, I think rotation is good for many different reasons. It's good from a different nutrient density standpoint. It's good for the immune system. It's good for the gut. And it's good to bring variability if someone is having an oxalate problem. I actually don't see oxalate sensitivity as much as other problems. I think people way more common are histamine problems, and that's a sign of leaky gut syndrome oftentimes, or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or something like that. So again, the goal is to heal the gut long term. But then, I also see problems with foods that aren't plant foods too, that they're having problems with dairy, they're having problems with meat. Many people aren't able to digest meat because of their gut is wrecked. So I think it's easy to overanalyze things, and it's definitely easy for me to do in functional medicine to say this, well, and this is applied to everybody. It's not applied to everybody. So I don't want anybody to be fearful of any one food, because this conversation is quite delicate, I think, in the health space, because I think orthorexia, or this eating disorder that is rising within the wellness world of being overly fearful about food, and it's creating this stress and anxiety and orthorexia and eating disorder out of good intentions of wanting to eat healthy food. So I think it's really important to not over accentuate things that aren't applicable to everybody, because some people can handle all these foods that we're talking about and they have no problem. I don't want to set people in a tailspin of saying, what the heck can I eat then? Because these are for certain people with gut problems, with autoimmune issues. They are not everybody. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Hey guys, just taking a really quick break to talk about the 28-day Ketogenic Girl Challenge. If you're interested in doing a ketogenic diet for yourself, it's a great place to start. I teach you everything about how to follow a keto diet to get yourself into nutritional ketosis, and it includes 28 days of meal plans. It comes with weekly shopping lists, how to interpret results, how to test yourself, a complete guide to getting started on keto. If you've been keto for a while and you're just not getting the results that you want to in terms of your health or fat loss, or you are brand new to keto, the 28-day challenge is a great option because it also comes with my free coaching and support in our members Facebook group, and you can post any questions that you have about the meal plans, about keto, and I am there supporting you. We have an amazing community in our group. I like to call it the happiest place on earth, because everybody in there is so excited about following keto, about having found something that really works well for them. And everyone in there is just so kind, caring, generous, and supportive. And it's a really fun place to be and hang out. So if you'd like more info on it, you can find it at ketogenicgirl.com. And it's the 28-day Ketogenic Girl Challenge. And now back to our interview. Absolutely. Now, what are some of your top tips for healing the gut in I'm sure you have some of them in the book, but what are some top tips that you have that people can do to make sure that they have a really healthy gut and healthy gut lining?
So I think that intermittent fasting we know in the keto world that intermittent fasting can be great at increasing autophagy and increasing ketosis, and a lot of different reasons there of balancing inflammation levels. I love intermittent fasting to give your gut a break too. So to varying degrees, depending on what the person needs, to lean into different intermittent fasting protocols, I think can be fantastic for the gut. So I like that. And it's not a one-time thing and your gut is healed. The gut takes about 18 to 24 months to heal. So this has to be a lifestyle approach. But intermittent fasting, I love soups and things that are gentle on the gut, pureed foods, soft foods, cooked foods, to be as delicate on the gut as possible. A sort of a plant-based soothing broth is like a ginger broth or galangal broth. Galangal is sort of like ginger's cousin, and it's quite soothing to the gastrointestinal system. And one food that's not vegan keto, vegetarian keto, or pescatarian keto that I put in Ketotarian is bone broth, because of its amazing ability to provide the body collagen. And of course, you could be fish broth if you wanted to do it. That would still be pescatarian. But fish broth is A, not so popular, and B, most people aren't going to go and make it. So the amount of chicken broth out there, they can still do that. And I just know, again, being a functional medicine practitioner, just knowing what that's done for people's lives, I had to include it and educate people on that. So if they were looking to heal their gut, I gave some options in Ketotarian.
Awesome. Now, just to touch a little bit on functional medicine, what do you think is the main difference, if you were to just put it into a few words, between functional medicine and conventional medicine?
So functional medicine, another word for that is integrated medicine. And we are integrating a lot of different aspects to be sort of holistic, to see the patient as a whole. So the main difference is that we interpret labs using a thinner reference range. So anybody that's listening there will know out there right now, they're going to know, hey, I have these labs and they'll have my number and then they'll have this reference range. That reference range that they're comparing their number to is based on a statistical bell curve average of people who go to labs. People that go to labs aren't the healthiest bunch of people. So there's a lot of people that are like, I feel like crap. I don't feel good. They go get these basic labs from their doctor, and these labs largely or entirely come back, quote unquote, normal, but they know instinctively, like, heck, I don't feel normal. And they're told typically, you're just depressed. You're getting older. You just need to lose weight. And like, what the heck? This isn't normal for me. Something's going on. Either they're not running the right labs at that point, or they're not interpreting the lab properly, or both. Because if you're comparing your numbers to a bunch of sick people, all they're really saying is your numbers are a lot like the other people that go to labs, which are predominantly people with health problems. They're not standardized. Other than a few exceptions, the predominance of labs that people are having ran are not standardized. And you will see that reference range will vary from lab to lab. So if you take people with health problems out of the reference range, what's left is the optimal thriving range. It's the functional range, where we get our name in functional medicine. It's where your body is functioning the best. So I'm comparing my patients to optimal thriving health. My goal is to get them there. So that's the core sort of foundation of functional medicine, is running diagnostics to find out where optimal health resides. The second thing is we run more comprehensive labs. So we're looking at root issues like what we just talked about, microbiome issues, or food sensitivities, or toxicity issues, or hormonal imbalances, whatever is relevant to the health history. We want to look at these root facets that give rise to the diagnosis codes, that give rise to why people feel the way that they do. And then the third thing we do differently is we realize we're all different, which this has been the whole conversation, or a lot of the conversation, is that we're all different. And my job is to find out what works for your body and what doesn't. So we customize healthcare based on the individual, based on the labs, based on the health history, and then also based on real life, and using real life as a lab. And that's the dance of between science and art of functional medicine, of making this a practical lifestyle approach to getting well. So we use food as medicine, we use natural medicines, we use medications when needed in functional medicine, we use lifestyle, all this stuff to be tailored to the individual. So that, in a nutshell, is what functional medicine is. Yeah, I could talk about this all day long.
I can tell you're passionate about it. Now, the classical approach to ketogenic diets is you have about 65 to 80%, sometimes up to 90% percentage of your calories coming from fat, 15 to maybe 35% protein, anywhere from 0 to 5% or maybe more coming from carbs. So do you have a variation for plant-based keto?
The variation is pretty much the same. I think that the one conversation that we would have that would be nuanced would be the carbohydrate approach, because then the whole conversation goes to net carbs and total carbs. If it's coming from a non-starchy vegetable that's high in fiber, we count net carbs. So the percentage may be a little bit off there, depending on if you're counting total carbs or net carbs. But other than that, no, like the high fat, moderate protein, low carbohydrate is in general what we're talking about in Ketotarian, at least for 8 weeks. So I want to specifically educate for the person that's not fat adapted. Look, if you're keto already, then if you're already fat adapted, you can just bring in more plant-based keto options into your life. And I think that's what Ketotarian will be for someone that's fat adapted, because they're just getting more vegan keto and vegetarian keto options for them. The other side is the person that's not fat adapted. They're eating the standard American diet, or they're vegan and vegetarian. At that point, what I say in Ketotarian is to go plant-based keto for 8 weeks, shift your body into ketosis, become a fat burner, lower inflammation levels. And then from there, they can work with what works for their body. So I teach about how to moderate the carbs if they want to try that, and then experiment for yourself. How do you feel? If you feel lousy, you may have to go back in ketosis for a while. Or some people do better with ketosis long-term. People with insulin resistance, people with autoimmune issues, they may do better with longer terms of it. So from after the 8 weeks, it gives your body some time to kind of make that metabolic shift. And then from there, they can personalize it. So why I'm saying this is that the percentage of carbohydrates and fats and all of that would be the traditional ketogenic windows within the 8 weeks. And then from there, they can cycle into ketosis if they want to. They can moderate the carbs and then maybe go back to ketosis when they want sort of a metabolic sort of reset and to increase detox pathways and all of autophagy and all the cool benefits that we know ketosis has. So I wanted to make this more of a lifestyle instead of this thing where this mandate where they have to be in ketosis all the time. And if they don't, they're failing at their health. Because I don't believe that. I think that many people out there can experiment and make this a practical part of their life without feeling like it's all or nothing, if that makes sense.
Definitely makes sense. And I like just your overall approach of not focusing too much on the numbers, but more just focusing on eating, whole foods. I really like your approach and not getting too fixated kind of on the exact percentages and things. And I know your book has a lot of great tips in it and recipes. What are some of the go-to fats that you recommend? Because I know that, for most of us doing keto, we're relying a lot on animal-based fats, animal-sourced fats. So how do you wrap your head around that?
So if you're someone that is vegan keto, and again, the vegetarian keto and the pescatarian keto in Ketotarian is going to have more variety. There's no doubt about that, because when you bring in ghee and eggs and wild-caught fish, that's a lot more foods to eat than not having them. But the foundation of sort of the Ketotarian approach are a lot of plant fats. So avocados, there's no one under the keto umbrella that doesn't love avocados unless they have like a avocado allergy or something like that. But a lot of people like avocado. So avocados, and then all the cool things that come from avocado. So avocado oil, guacamole, and all the different variations there. Avocado fries, I love those. And then we go to the olives and olive oil and all the variations there, coconut oil, all the cool things from coconut, and then nuts and seeds. So that's sort of the foundation there. And that is what someone that's eating vegan keto, or really any ketogenic, more plant-based fats, I think people do fantastically with. Specifically, olives and avocado, I think, can be a predominant, really good sources of healthy monounsaturated fats into their life. And then the nuts and seeds as well. But I do teach about how soaking nuts and seeds can help for a lot of people that have autoimmune and gut problems.
Now, I know your book really is focused on plant-based, but do you have a lot of patients that, do eat meat?
Yeah, just to make this clear for everybody that's listening, I'm not a vegan keto doctor. I am a functional medicine practitioner that has seen everything under the sun when it comes to someone's health. I am used to very difficult cases, and anything that's fair game, you just always have to stay open-minded to what works and what doesn't in someone's lives. Because again, I cannot make this mandate on everybody saying eat this way. But I would say that I have had patients that are completely vegan. I've had patients that are completely vegetarian, pescatarian, carnivore, everything under the sun. My job is, how do we get their labs looking great? How do we make them healthy? And then within that, like whatever they're doing when they come in to see me for the first time, because most of my patients are not eating the standard American diet. Most of my patients, almost all of them, are very well read. They're in the health industry, actually. But despite all the good, healthy things they're doing, they aren't healthy. They aren't feeling well. They are certainly better than they would be if they were eating the standard American diet, but they're stuck at a plateau, or it's resistantly staying flared up or not good. So from there, the changes are going to happen to some degree. And it may be minor changes, it may be big changes, and it may be no food changes, and there's just changes to maybe some natural medicine protocols or other things that don't have to do with food. So there's all things are fair game when you're talking to like my week, which is predominantly spent with patients. I've seen it all.
So I know that you work really on an individual basis with each patient, but on kind of a universal level, if you were making some recommendations just out there for our general population, there are some things that we can probably all agree on, like reducing sugar consumption, reducing consumption of processed, frankenfoods and food-like products. What are some kind of global recommendations or things that you think our society as a whole could benefit from?
Specific to foods, I think you talked a lot about that. I think what people can get behind, no matter who you are, would be those things you mentioned. I would say decreasing the amount of sugar consumption. I would say avoiding foods that have artificial ingredients or things that aren't from the earth. Getting as natural, and I'm using that word and it's very specific based, not the marketing term on boxes of things, but getting as farm-like as we can get.
Right.
As fishermen or farm-like as we can get, I think is a good rule of thumb for anybody under the sun. And I also would say specifically not fearing fats. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here in the keto world, but a lot of people, especially in the plant-based and the vegan and in the standard Western world, they still don't get it. So I think that is something that is a shift for still a large part of our society, is being fearful of healthy fats, even if it comes from plant fats. They think they need to limit it because it's going to make them fat, or it's going to clog the arteries. Even so much like the coconut fats, they're afraid of that because of the saturated fat content. So to not even fear saturated fats, I think that is something that I wanted to get across. But I also talk about, and this is the sort of the yin and yang of all of this, is that there are certain people with gut problems, people with genetic mutations like the ApoE4 mutation, people with Alzheimer and heart attack risk, that do better with limiting saturated fats. So the two saturated fats, the main one in the Ketotarian approach, the plant-based approach, would be the coconut oil and the ghee. Sometimes I have patients based on their gene mutations or their gut problems. We have to limit those because if we go and they go too heavy on the coconut oil or the ghee or the clarified butter, or butter for that matter, they will see an increased level of inflammation in the body and their lipids will be off. So those people, again, you can't make total blanket statements, but as a general rule, what does that mean? That doesn't mean they have to limit their fat necessarily. It means that they have to focus on other plant fats. So look at the nuts and seeds and the olives and the olive oil and the avocados or the wild caught fish. All those are really appropriate for somebody with these issues. I don't know if that answered your question, but.
No, absolutely. It definitely did because, there are certain things that we could all benefit from doing as a society, even though we all have varying, backgrounds and approaches and all of that. So I think that's definitely a great statement. Now, speaking of lipids, I know you must get this question all the time, and I bet you have a great way of answering it. So what do you say to someone who may be listening to this, who is kind of just learning about keto and they are concerned about having higher cholesterol?
Total cholesterol is a very poor predictor for assessing cardiovascular risk factors. So about half, depending on the study you look at, but a lot of people who have heart attacks and strokes have actually normal to low cholesterol. So it's a very poor predictor when you look at the studies out there. The better predictors for assessing cardiovascular risk factors would be high triglycerides. The functional range is we want it to be below 100. So above 100 would be outside of the functional range. The lab reference range will vary from lab to lab, but it's basically above 150. So we don't want high triglycerides. We don't want low HDL, which is, the quote unquote good cholesterol, which is really just the proteins that carry cholesterol. We don't want low HDL. We don't want high small dense LDL particles, which you will not get on your standard conventional lipid panel. You have to run a nuclear magnetic resonance or NMR test to see that, or a VAP test. But basically NMR is what most people run in functional medicine to look at the subfractionation, basically what's the measurement of the particles that carry cholesterol. So small dense LDL particles are like these little BB bullets that can tear through arterial walls and they can be a problem. That's the liver producing these things, and it's really a state of inflammation and stress that the body's producing that. So we don't want high small dense LDL particles, and we don't want high inflammation levels. So we don't want high C-reactive protein. The functional range is we want it to be below 1, and that's high sensitivity CRP, and we don't want high homocysteine. Homocysteine is another inflammatory marker. Anything above 7 is outside of the functional range. So it's a sign of inflammation. It can impact the brain as well, but basically above 10.4 is kind of the reference range, or you can see above 15 on labs. But again, it's based on people who go to labs, but we don't high inflammation levels basically. So it's not cholesterol that causes heart attack and stroke. It's the inflammation that damages the particles that carry cholesterol, if we're being technical about it. So the inflammation is really the problem that damages particles, which are protein, not cholesterol. That's the major issue there. So we want to do anything we can to decrease inflammation. So based on someone's gut health, their hormone health, and their genetics, we have to modulate some of these fat sources and carb sources. Everybody has different carb tolerance that can increase inflammation levels. So really, the end goal is to lower inflammation, which is a major part of Ketotarian, is because this inflammation spectrum, to varying degrees, all my patients are on, and I need to abate that.
Right. That definitely makes sense. And I'm sure you get that question all the time, probably daily. So it's great, to hear your opinion on it. Now, if someone was on a standard American diet and they started to go more low carb and they started increasing their intake of healthy fats, is there any issue with having, kind of a lot of healthy fats in their diet and also having kind of a moderate or higher level of carb? Like, do you kind of have to, if you're having healthy fats, really restrict the carbs at all times? Or, if you're doing high carb, keep it low fat? Or is there any danger kind of being in the middle?
There's no danger being in the middle if you're getting good, healthy plant fats and omega fish fats. I think that if you look at something like the Mediterranean diet, it's been very well documented, very well researched that it's a lot better than the standard American diet. And that doesn't really skimp on carbs. I mean, you're getting a good moderate amount of carbs. And some people probably would even go a little bit higher on carbs on a Mediterranean diet. And the outcomes in the data are pretty good for people. So just because something's better doesn't mean it's optimal. So I think that when you're talking about varying degrees, I think that you can be moderate as long as you're getting, I would say, omega fats from fish and olive oil and olives and avocados. I think the problem is if you're talking about the context of the carbs, and is it like whole food carbs, like sweet potatoes and like even fruit? I think that's a different conversation for most people versus if they're having white bread and junk food and that kind of stuff. At that point, those foods are inflammatory innately. They don't need anything else to make them inflammatory. So you have that. But then there's data in the research they refer to as the mixed meal. And the mixed meal is the saturated fats from different, like basically beef and burgers and things like that, and fried foods, and the carbs, basically the standard fast food that people are getting. That does amplify inflammation in the body. So I think at that point, if they're eating junk food and then they're like, I want to increase my healthy fats, and they start eating tons of butter and bacon and things like that, I would say for a lot of people, that's going to amplify the inflammation levels. So at that point, they're going to have to tail down the carbs and bring a different variety of fats into their life.
Right. That makes so much sense. Now, what's your opinion, or have you formed an opinion on this carnivore trend?
I think the carnivore diet can be great for somebody to varying amounts of time. Some people, longer periods of time, they'll be fine. And I would say even great. And then some people, it would be a good time to experiment with it. I am concerned long-term from a microbiome standpoint for most people, but there's research to show, like the Hadza people in Tanzania, for example, their microbiome diversity actually increased during the months where they ate like less vegetables because they were eating raw meat and low-cooked meat and fresh. That's interesting. So I think, but most people are not like going and killing a deer and then eating it raw. So
right, they also drink the blood raw and stuff, the milk.
They're going to get totally Hadza on their meal. I would say that I'm concerned with long-term microbiome diversity. If you're just the standard keto eater or carnivore eater, you're still eating, like you're going and frying a steak up or a burger up, and that's totally cool, but you're not getting all the microbes on that meat. So long-term microbiome diversity I have a concern with. But look, and I go back to my statement earlier, it's better than the standard American diet. I wouldn't disagree with that. But just because something's better doesn't make it optimal. And then short-term, fantastic. Cool, experiment with it. I love that. But long-term, I don't know how many people are going to do it long-term. And I don't even know if most people that are doing it today even want to do it long-term. They're just experimenting with it and seeing how they feel. And I have some patients that have experimented with it because of how sick they are. And they're like, I'll try anything. And they're just trying to see how they're doing with it. And some people, they do better, but they're still not 100%. So do I think it could be a tool in the toolbox? For sure. I just don't think it's the only tool for everybody.
Right. I like that approach too, just kind of thinking of it as an elimination diet. And I think it's cool that something that can be an elimination diet has gotten kind of trendy because it may get more people to try eliminating sugar, eliminating vegetable oils, eliminating all those things just for a small period of time, even when normally an elimination diet is just not something that most people would want to do. It's not easy to do. You know, it's socially isolating. There's a lot of factors around it. But if it's something trendy, you know, maybe there's some good that can come out of it for people to try and eliminate certain things that, you know, are not as good, you know, for their health. So that's interesting. Do you think that protein levels on keto, like for most people, are too moderated, or what's your opinion on kind of optimal protein level for a person per day?
So, and this is a nuanced conversation because there are many different types of amino acids. So I think that there's two different levels of this. This one is I want to keep it simple for people. I don't want to overcomplicate it. And that's why in Ketotarian, I gave a lot of keeping it simple options. Because for the average person, they're not going to go nitty gritty and like measuring the different amino acid panel throughout the day. But I think that going back to what you said earlier, I think is really brilliant of just having variety of food into your life with varying amounts of amino acids and protein in their life is a good thing for muscle building and cellular repair and tissue repair, all that stuff. I tend to think for some people, the over accentuation of moderating the protein can be, not everybody has to be so diligent on moderating the protein. That's not a problem for someone that's vegan keto. I'm not really even speaking to them. I'm speaking to the meat eater keto out there that is kind of cutting it back maybe too much for what their body even can handle. They actually could do more with more protein into their life from a health standpoint. And there are other doctors in this space, like Gabrielle Lyon. I don't know if you are familiar with her, but she's really opening the conversation about the fact that some people, especially as we age and as like women, as they age specifically, they actually need a little bit more protein. That doesn't negate ketosis. Many of them can still be in ketosis even if they start increasing their protein. But it's just that they are thinking of what we say in the keto world of moderate your protein, and they actually aren't eating enough protein. So it's about finding your balance and what you need. I think there is a conversation to be said that we moderate it too much. And then without a doubt that some people, they are eating too much protein and need to bring it down. So I've seen both, and I think we need to talk about both. But we also have to talk about what types of amino acids you're getting to.
That's really, really interesting. And I just want to ask, because I know that you stay really current on the latest studies. And, there's been a lot of debunking recently on kind of the WHO's warnings on eating too much red meat and it being, such a negative risk factor for people. What's your overall opinion on red meat consumption and frequency?
So it really does depend on so many variables when you're talking about gut health and genetic mutations. And what are they eating with that red meat, I think is important too. But as a general rule, I think the bigger problem with a lot of those studies is that it's the quality of meat. I think it's not so much the meat, it's what we've done to it. So I think that when you're looking at factory farm meat and regular processed meat, I don't really think that you can deny that there's research out there, and it's pretty strong research, that stuff will increase risk factors for some people for different types of cancer and heart disease and stuff like that because of what we've done to our food supply. And I would apply that to even beyond the meat too, when you look at the dairy supply that we have as well in the United States. But I don't think that grass-fed beef is a bad thing for people to have. I think sometimes people need to limit it based on what works for their body, but I don't think it's something that should be feared. I don't think it's something that needs to be surrounded with hyperbole that you're going to give yourself cancer by. I think it can be a very healthy part of a well-balanced, low-carb keto lifestyle. So that's what I would say about it.
Awesome. Well, I want to wrap up just with some rapid-fire questions for you. So I'm going to say these off to you one at a time. Now, for you, originally your trigger for being vegetarian, was it climate change, health, or animal-based ethical reasons?
Health reasons.
Health reasons. Low carb vegan or high carb vegan?
Low carb vegan.
Strict plant-based or occasional animal product?
Occasional animal products.
Do you prefer boiled or steamed?
Boiled.
Raw or cooked?
Cooked.
Vegan meat substitutes, useful or not useful?
Can be useful.
Your family, Ketotarian or no specific diet?
Ketotarian Foundation.
Vegan protein powder, sure or never?
Sure.
Calorie restriction, yay or nay?
Yay, and at times.
Right. Time restricted feeding or eating or intermittent fasting?
Both.
And testing or no testing?
Testing.
Supplements or no supplements?
Food first, but supplements after.
And Ketotarian for life or for a few more years?
For life as a foundation.
Yeah, I figured you'd say that. Now, where can people find out more about your book?
Yeah, so everything's at drwillcole.com. So that's drwillcole.com. And there's a page for Ketotarian. And then obviously it's Barnes & Noble and Amazon and all that stuff too. But yeah, drwillcole.com.
Awesome. And what are you working on right now that has you the most kind of excited about or fired up other than the book?
Other than the book, it's my patients, and it's really trying to scale the amount of quality of care we can get to my patients. So that's predominantly what I'm focused on. Video class that's coming out right after the book comes out that's about sort of a plant-based ketogenic approach to be digging deeper so they can have a video component to the book. But patients are my number one priority. It's what I'm doing throughout the week. So I'm just trying to provide them the best care. And that's what I'm the most excited about.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Cole, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you taking the time to share so much of your knowledge and experience with our listeners, and really excited for you on the book. Congratulations on releasing it. And I'm sure it's going to have a huge impact out there in the world.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey guys, I hope that you enjoyed today's episode with Dr. Will Cole. He has so much knowledge and experience of working with so many clients, and you can tell that he's just a very hardworking and passionate person when it comes to helping heal people and doing it in a very functional, integrative way. So I hope that you guys get to check out his book. I know I will be. It is called Ketotarian, and I will put the links in the show notes as well so you can check it out. If you guys are interested in checking out the 20-day challenge, you can do so at ketogenicgirl.com. This podcast is brought to you by the 20-day Ketogenic Girl Challenge, and the information on how to join the program, follow it, and become a member is all at ketogenicgirl.com. So until the next episode, I hope that you guys have a fat-fueled rest of your day. Thanks for listening.